How do we hang ceiling fans, and more specifically, what kind of boxes do we need? How do we hang ceiling fans, and more specifically, what kind of boxes do we need? So most people have been using big metal boxes to hang fans for a long time, or you might have something kind of like this. This is not one, this is a pancake. They make a fan-rated pancake out there, call them fan cakes, but it's essentially something that has some reinforced metal, has some threading in it, so the screw is going through some thread and it's structurally held rather than just these little tabs like these are. These tabs could bend if you put too much weight on them. So there's not a lot in the electrical code about fans specifically. There are some mentions of things, but ceiling fans largely just aren't all over the code book with rules on them. So what we do need to make sure is that we're using something that is rated for fans when we install a fan. So I've got a few different options before we get into the install, which we will do here in a second, and kind of my methodology behind hanging fans. I just wanted to talk about some boxes, and the reason being is ABB sent me some boxes recently. So most of you are familiar with Carlon. Carlon is a brand that's owned by ABB. ABB makes a whole bunch of different things. Like they make boxes like these, you know, they own Steel City as well. So a lot of the big metal boxes that we use in commercial, but they also own the line of plastic blue boxes, the blue ones. So they sent me a couple of new fan rated plastic boxes. And at first I was just like, what? Like, how are you gonna get fan rating out of a plastic box? So what they did is they redesigned the entire thing to have this strap on the back. So you'll notice a regular light box like we use, this is not fan rated, so all you're doing is screwing some kind of screw into this material. Well, that can strip out, and it's just plastic with enough vibration, it could just rip right out of the ceiling. So you can't use something like this, which is why people will use a lot of fan rated boxes that actually have some kind of thread in them. So the threads are holding to metal, and that's what's gonna give you that extra rigidity for the weight of a heavy, spinning, vibrating ceiling fan. So what I think is cool is it's the same boxes, essentially, same depth, same layout. It's just that these will come with this sticker now on the inside of this, and this says that it is acceptable for fan support of 35 pounds or less, or fixture luminaire support of 50 pounds or less. Fan must be installed through 3.5 inch spaced outer holes using 1032s by 3 1/8 inch screws. So that's what this is. These are 1032s and they're 3 1/8 inch long, and these are the screws that are provided. So you can see back here, as I'm screwing this in, it's not just going through plastic, it's actually going into the metal, the bracket in the back. Now they have these in the slidable, you know, kind of expandable version of these that you can put up in the ceiling in a chase, or you could have them in between two chases and put a wall sconce with them. But they also have this version where it's nail on, so this is pretty awesome as well. They're still fan rated. They still have the same 1032s that go through into this mounting brace in the back to get that fan rating, but it also gives you an extra layer of support if you're putting this on wood. So this thing actually mounts very, very solidly. They both do. But when you hold this into a wall, because this is on a bar hanger, there's just a little bit of like adjustment, I guess, a little bit of movement that you can have in it, even when everything's tight. With this thing, you can screw this into a stud and nail it, so this whole box is like super, super secure. So if you're ever hanging a fan where you're up against a stud, this is a great option. If you're hanging a fan where you're in the middle of a stud, which I'm going to use this here in a second to do the install, this is a really good option. So I just think these are really great that you can essentially use the same box. Now the boxes are a little bit different. These come with 1032s in them, so you'll notice the hole size is slightly different than one of these. So this hole is bigger and it allows for a 1032 to go through it, whereas this one's not. These are both meant for number 8s, like we would use these guys on any standard light fixture. You're going to use number 8s. And with these screws, they actually put a coating on the outside of the tip of these screws just to make sure when you screw these in, when you install them from the factory, you don't lose the screws. Because a lot of us, let's be honest, when you install any fan braces, a lot of times the screws disappear and nobody's carrying 1032s around in their truck. But I'm going to put these to the test because I was a little skeptical at first if you're going to get the same rigidity out of it. It seems like it because you have metal and you have threading and you're going into something secure. So let's go install one. All right, first thing we're going to do is figure out where the halfway point of this is. We're at 49.5, which should be 2.5 feet, 24.5. So let's go 24.5. That's the center point of the fan brace. We'll go 24.5 on this one. That's the other center point. And then I'm gonna do one more. We'll just do it on this side. I'm gonna put 2 boxes up. So, first box is going to be this one. This is gonna be our fan brace that we're actually gonna hang our fan from. And then just to show this one, I'm gonna put this guy right here. We're gonna put these in, put some wire in it, and then put some drywall up, and then we'll actually hang the fan. So now that I got my marks, I'm gonna do something that maybe not very many people do. Maybe you do, I don't know. When I put these up, I make sure that this little lip here hangs below the drywall. And then I hold it in place, and that's where I draw my holes. So if we've got the bottom of the lip right there, pop those 2 holes in. That way I just don't lose track of them. Come back in. All right, then line this side up. Make sure you got your groove for the drywall. Now, our fan is 44 inches, so we need to be at least, I'd say 26. I'm good with doing 26. Right there. Hold that in place so it doesn't move. All right, we are locked in. Now the cool thing about these screws is a lot of the other fan braces that you've got, the screws tend to fall out and you lose them. So the cool thing with this bracket is that they put this coating basically on the outside of the screws, so it just kind of holds them more. You have a lot less chance of these falling out. They're super long and they're in there good. Like I can't even twist this one with my fingers, so I know these aren't gonna come out. You could, if you wanted, drive them all the way up. Probably wouldn't hurt to do that. When you're doing a rough-in, just make sure as much thread as possible is up in this thing. That way when you come back to do your trim out, you're not missing a whole bunch of screws. All right, so we have our fan brace in here, just like any other light brace that we would have. Now, let's put this one up. So this one, what's really cool is you can hammer it and screw it. So first thing I'm gonna do is just get that locked in place. Just like any old light, make sure it's good and solid on there. And then to make sure that the fan rated portion, that bracket that's attached to this, is screwed in, I'm gonna put 2 screws in here. And that baby is not going anywhere. I actually feel more solid about that one than I do this. This one's got a little bit of wiggle to it, which is not gonna matter too much. Once we get the drywall up in here, we get a brace on it, we get everything locked together as a full assembly, this thing's not gonna wiggle. But this one is stout, holy crap. I feel very confident about supporting a lot of weight from that fan. And same thing, I'm just gonna drill these in just for GP. Make sure that none of the drywall guys get crazy and then they end up missing. Might help if I put some wire in this, huh? All right. Now you're gonna notice I'm not making a pretty little wire loop going into this fixture because I don't need to. This is my studio. But sometimes you might want to leave a wire loop just in case homeowner wants anything moved, or you gotta shift it over anyway. Usually with a ceiling fan, you're going in the dead center of the room, so you probably don't need wire loops on ceiling fans too much, but leaving wire loops is okay to do. Don't want it too tight because you don't want to pinch into those insulation or the insulation of those wires. Just snug is good. Then I am going to tear off my insulation. Oh no, I'm using a knife. A lot of people like, why would you do that? Why would you use a knife? because I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I've never had a problem with it. I use finesse. I understand what depth I need to go. You can use those special little strippers if you guys like, the ones that have the little cutout for the 12-2 and the 14-2. That's totally fine. I've used those as well. It's just my method. All right, get that in. Now, if you're noticing, I'm not wearing tools right now, which is another huge no-no for me. I hate when I'm on a job site and none of my guys are wearing tools. Oh my God, there's nothing that irritates me more. But again, I'm in a studio environment. I got this really cool attachment here for my ladder from Racketeers. So honest to God, just like throwing everything in here is so nice. Little drill slot, keeping it all right next to me. All my wire scraps, everything, those things are awesome. Not sponsored by Racketeers in any way, but I am saying these are very, very cool. You could even stick little screwdrivers in them. Would be awesome. Anyways, moving forward, we got all of our wire into the one that we're actually gonna hang the fan from. So now let's do the damn thing. All right, so now that we got the whole structure built, drywall put in, this electrician didn't do too bad of a framing job and drywall job, let's hang the fan. So first thing we're gonna do is hang our brace. I'm gonna use the screws that are already up there. So these guys. All right, that's nice and up there. It's solid, there's no wobble, wiggle, and that's what you want when you're doing fans. You don't want anything wobbling and wiggling. So normally something that I would do is I would assemble all of my blades ahead of time and put all of the arms on each one of the blades just so it's done, because I like to build the fan up in the ceiling. I like to pre-assemble everything here, but I don't like to build the whole fan, let it sit on the ground where it's like bending the arms, where it gets knocked around or anything like that. I just prefer to put it up in the ceiling so that I know that everything is straight and perfect and aligned how it came from the factory. But we don't have to do the fan blades because there are no arms for this fan. These things just attach into the actual body of the fan. So next thing we need to do is put our miniature down rod on. We have to put all the little flanges, the canopy and everything on it. So we gotta take this pin out. This is gonna go inside of there, but we have to make sure that we have the canopy like this assembled, and we have to have this little escutcheon plate on the bottom. So I will put those on. There we go. That's a complete assembly. When you put wires through a down rod, it's very difficult because these are just floppy. So it helps a lot of times to put like a stick or a piece of rigid wire or something inside of it. All right, and we just pull those 3 wires through. This down rod has a hole in it, right? And this has a hole in it. We want to line those 2 up because then we can stick our pin back in and flip it over. And we've got this little cotter pin that needs to go in the hole of that pin. Now that pin is holding this thing, so it's not going to come undone. So now it's really safe. Next thing we need to do is tighten these screws. Each one of these screws I do like little quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn. You don't want one to be like all the way in and the other one to be all the way out, because then the rod's gonna kick a little bit sideways. So you want to make it as even as possible. And then I'm gonna go ahead with my screwdriver, put another little quarter turn there, quarter turn there. And that thing is solid. We got this little cardboard in there. The reason they put those in there is to make sure that if this box gets dropped, it doesn't kick the bottom of this. Because if this thing does not spin perfectly straight, you're gonna hear a hissing because it's gonna be grinding on the inside of there. Pre-strip out my wires. Now if you notice we have a black, blue, and a white. Black is gonna be the motor power, blue is gonna be the light, and white is going to be our neutral. So both of these things share the same single circuit in here. It's just that one of them goes directly to the fan motor to make the motor start spinning. The other one goes to the light. And if you look at the ceiling modules, you'll see the same thing, right? These things go together, and then these go to your incoming hot and neutral that are coming from your switch. So that's how you wire them. It's really not that difficult. People see all these wires and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Just match color for color. Just gonna get these all twisted and cleaned up. All right, then what I'm gonna do next is I am gonna go hang this thing, and then I'm gonna bring the blades up on the ladder with me and put them in while it's hanging. All right, so you'll see that there's a little, I don't know if you can see it on camera, there's a little notch in this ball. That notch has to line up on the inside of here. There's a little bump, and if you don't get it on there, you'll notice this thing free spins. So it kind of like, it'll spin, but if you spin it enough, you hear that bump, it just bumped down and that notch sat in place. So now I can't spin this thing anymore. It's in that groove, and that's really, really important to do. All right, now that we got those wires out, we'll have these wires go in. Put this guy up there. Make sure it bumps in place. And now we're just going to wire color for color. Now, for this fan, I'm just gonna be putting my wire nuts in there. You see that I don't have a 12-3 run to this, so I don't have like 2 switches in a bedroom where I need 1 switch to control the light, 1 switch to control the fan. We have that controller, so I could have run 12-3 to this and given a switch to each one, which would be helpful for that wall controller. But since I only have 12-2 run, I'm just gonna use the same hot for my blue and my black. So my blue and black I put together from the fan on my black that's in my 12-2 that goes down to here. I'm just going to be using a breaker because this is a demonstration. But what I try to do is I try to make sure that all my wires are like really, really neat, wrapped in there and tucked in. If you have a module, you're not going to be able to do that. You're actually going to have to make sure all of that wire is pushed up into the box, which is why it's really great that these boxes are so deep. So these modules can actually be kind of a pain in the butt because you got all that wire in there. Like, how are you going to stuff that in place? Normally what we do is try to push all the wire off to one side, and then we stick the module in. And the module is going to sit there just like this. So you can't have this bunch of wires sitting here. You actually have to try to push the wires up. Some people are really, you know, they like wrap them around like this. You can do that, but as you can see, you're going to have all these extra wires. Like, we didn't even make these ones up yet, so we still have these to make up. Then we had the power wires to make up. So you end up with a whole bunch of wire nuts everywhere. And then when you go to stick this on, you don't want to see any wires sticking out here in the bottom. So it's better to always stuff all your wires up as much as you can. Again, if there's no module, if this is just like a chain pulled fan, you know, it's got like 2 pull chains on it, you can just stick these in here, try to fold them up in there real pretty. Make sure they're accessible because, you know, you might have to come through and take these things off. Somebody's gonna have to change this fan out at some point. All right, we've got these studs sticking down here that there's gonna be little balls on. Pull these little balls out. Pull these little balls out. You know, some things you just never grow up from. Cool, that is flush, it's not wobbly, everything feels really tight and solid. All right, then we've got this plate. These 3 screws are gonna be what the bottom of this fan mounts to right here. So we're gonna have to take the screws out, put the plate on, put the screws back on. But first I wanna get these fan blades in because it's open and exposed. Once you put that bottom plate on, you can't get to the blades. So let's put the blades on next. And if you're wondering right now, like, why in the love of God is he installing a ceiling fan right next to an electrical panel? This is just a demo area. This is a studio that is, like, none of this is even live. This is just a wall that I use to do demonstrations on, so I would never do this in real life. Oh, there's actually, in this kit, they have an extra cotter pin and an extra rod pin. They got extras of everything. That's awesome. Good fan company. These screws come with these little cardboard washers. So you just take a screw, put it on a cardboard washer, and most fans, if you ever pay attention to fans, there's 2 sides. So it's always a good idea to ask the homeowner, if you're putting one of these in, what side do you want facing? Because a lot of times, like on the package, it'll have shown a certain color. And if you don't match that color, they're like, what did you do? So just make sure that you ask. I'm gonna put these screws in by hand first. You don't wanna over tighten these screws. So you can put them in with a drill, that's okay. Just make sure that the choke on your drill is set to a really low number, so you're not overdoing it. You don't want the screws to be loose by any means, but you just definitely don't want to over tighten the living hell out of them. If they're too loose, fan's gonna wobble, blades are gonna wobble. But I am gonna go back after I put all these in with a screwdriver, and I'm gonna do another little like quarter tight, so kind of little thing, just to make sure that it is solid. That seems good. Now I'm going to take these 3 screws out. Also, there's like a rubber band on here. You got to make sure that's loose because we actually need to plug it in. So next thing, we take this and take the zip tie off that as well. And it is a good idea to leave one of these screws in. Just a little bit. Because it'll help hold this thing up when you're putting it up. I always wait to like super tighten everything until I know that all of the screws line up with the holes. And they do. So now it's all the way tight. Looks pretty good. Checking the spin out just to make sure nothing rubs. You don't hear any metal like grinding on anything else. That's pretty good. Then you're gonna put this together, make sure that the arrows line up with the arrows. Sometimes you're not gonna have like these friendly little arrows. You might actually have little colored lines on here, and you just have to make sure everything matches color for color. Put that together, and then you got these last 2 for the light kit. That's this part. Make sure that we go white for white, and we go blue for, well, they have blue on here and black down here. Doesn't matter because these are probably manufactured separately, but really this should be a blue wire, but it doesn't matter as long as this says for light kit, for light kit, for light kit, for light kit, so you know that they go together. Now we do have these little screw holes around the outside. You'll notice there's 1, 2, 3 screws. So we'll take these 3 screws out. I'm just gonna loosen these ones this time. Loosen 2 of them. And then take 1 of them out. That's what I should have done a second ago with the centerpiece. Because you'll notice we have this little notch and a little notch and then a little hole. So we just need to take 1 screw out. The other ones we can put up there and lock them in place. Make sure that these don't get bound up or pinched in anything. And should go right about like that. Cool. Holds itself up. And then we just go tighten it all up. Sometimes you're gonna have to bend these a little bit just to get your bulb in, which is okay to do, just do it carefully. This thing just has these little grooves in here. They have to match up on the inside with these grooves. Sometimes you have to spin it to like find where those are. Be really gentle with this part. This is the glass. So apprentices have this weird little habit of always breaking everything that's needs gentleness. If it doesn't fit in there, just like move it around. Just take it back out, spin it 180 degrees, see if that works. Boom, we're in there. It doesn't seem like there's any bends, any wobbles. Everything seems to spin just fine. So now all we have to do is energize it, turn it on, and make sure it works. All right, let's turn it on. And boom, we got a fan. Now we want to watch it really close, make sure that we don't have any wobble in it. And there is no wobble at all.
Normally, if you see a fan wobbling, if you look at the edges, you can kind of see this little jittering back and forth because one of the blades is off. So a lot of times you'll have to put a leveling kit, which is like these little things that you stick on the top that they're sticky. They're little weights and you stick them on top of it and you can try to rebalance it. But this one's perfectly balanced, works just fine. And that brace is holding all day long.
So I'm kind of curious how y'all hang your fans. Do you mount everything in the ceiling like I do? Do you build the whole thing on the ground and then drag it up a ladder? Love to know either way, thumbs up, thumbs down, which you guys do. So thank you guys so much for your attention. Love you crazy people, and I'll see you in the next one.